I'm Elly Gotz, and my country of origin is Lithuania. I was born in Kaunas, or Kovna as the Jews called it, in 1928. And in 1941 I ended up in the ghetto Kovno for 3 years. After that they took us to Dachau in 1944, and we ended up in a working camp of Dachau, a construction camp. And we were there for 10 months, starved to death. Many of our people died. Out of the 3,000 Jews, about 800 died of hunger and disease right there in this camp number 1. But at the end of the war, and about the 27th of April, 1945, they took us out of that camp, put us on a train, and overnight we arrived in central Camp Dachau. I was exactly 17. I just had my 17th birthday in Dachau. And my father and I were together, but my father was dying. He was very weak, his legs were swollen from hunger and disease, and his eyes had that faraway look, the unfocused look. I knew the signs. He could barely walk, and I knew I'm losing my father. And I was very sad because I knew the war is over. The war will be over very soon. Either they will kill us or we will be freed by the American army, who we knew were very close. When we were in the camp, in the last days of the working camp, the commandant, who was a vicious man, noticed that we were a bit happy. We looked sort of expectant. And he assured us, he says, "You think the war will soon be over and you will be free? Forget it. We are keeping the last bullet for you. No matter how the war will end, you will not come out alive." And that's what we believed might happen. So now we are in central Camp Dachau. We arrived. The place is crowded with some 65,000 people instead of the 25,000 it was meant for. Quadruple bunks. The bunks were in 4 levels. And my father couldn't find a spot. We couldn't find anywhere to go in because it was packed with people. But they pulled out a dead body from one of the bunks, and my father grabbed the spot and he crawled in. And he wouldn't come out. I wanted him to move around so he shouldn't die. And he said he can't. He's staying in the bunk. And that was the first day they came and brought food at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or so. And he wouldn't get up. I had to take his dish and pick up the food for him together with my own and a piece of bread. And the next day, again, the same thing. And I could see he's getting weaker. He's not going to survive. So 4 o'clock on the 29th of April, I'm in line. I pick up the soup for myself and I say, "This is for him." And they gave me another bowl of soup and another piece of bread. And I'm going to him, and he takes the soup, and at that moment the prisoners are shouting outside. They say, "The Americans are here, we are free." So I told my father, "Father, the Americans are here, we are free. The war is over." So he looks at me with that faraway look and he says, "That's good. Have you got the bread? Have you got the bread?" That was my moment of liberation. 2 hours later, he came out of the bunk by himself, stood there, and he said, "So now what?" He got hope, so he survived. My father survived. Yeah, there are 2 steps in dying, you know. There is a moment of giving up, where the brain has already agreed to die, but the body is still alive. The physical body is still alive. And he was already past that moment, I think, where he had given up. He couldn't care. He didn't care anymore. But when liberation came, he got new hope, and that hope got him out of the bunk, and he survived. I was still in reasonable health, so I felt I was in reasonable health. I felt I'm free. It's finished. The nightmare is over. It was like a nightmare. The ghetto was still life. I was very young. I was 13-year-old. But here at 16, I came into Dachau, and at 17, I was liberated. And for me, it was, I'm free. Now life will start. Now life begins. It was it was a very shocking recognition that now life begins again. The people who liberated us, how do I feel about them? It was an amazing event. We knew that the American army was all around Dachau. We knew that. And I didn't see American soldiers. All I saw was a crowd of people pushing towards the gate when I came outside of the barrack. We were in the front barrack, so we were not far from the gate. And it was an amazing crowd, and they were shouting and jumping, those who could. Many people remained lying in the barracks. They couldn't move. They were dying, and many died. Every minute, people were dying. So the contact with the Americans, I didn't have any contact with them, except I saw a jeep standing there. And it was just an amazing feeling to recognize that the whole camp was now in charge of the American army, that it was over. There were no German soldiers to be seen, no SS. I felt wonderful about the Americans. I was so pleased that they came. I was so happy to know that for me the war was over. I was grateful to the Americans for liberating me and for liberating the whole of Europe, for taking on the battle, for taking on the fight for Europe. I mean, I know that there were many elements in America who would have preferred not to go into the war. And it was a great move on the American part to have sacrificed so many of their men to liberating Europe, to helping liberate Europe. Without them, the war would have been lost. Churchill wrote that he was in great fear of being occupied by Germany and the war being lost. But I must tell you that I personally didn't believe that. I believed in the ghetto and in Dachau that Hitler will not win the war. To me, Jewish history told me that this is a temporary Haman, a temporary bad moment in Jewish history, but that it will not last. I did not believe for 1 minute that Hitler would give them a 1,000-year rule of that government.